All right, hey, it's Tuesday, May 4th, bringing you your weekly Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. This report's brought to you each week by James and Denise Dill Guide Service and Crappie Bait Company here on Lake of the Ozarks. Our water conditions lake level is 657 right now. It's up about a foot from last week. It was around 656, in that area last week. The amount of generation has fluctuated just all over the place, from 5 to 7,000 cubic foot, all the way up to 30,000, cubic foot per second. And it's been like that for the last several weeks. And, with that amount of current and turning it on, turning it off, the water, coming up, going down, and all over the places, I think it's really kind of got these fish held up as far as committing to spawning. The moon phases have been here, the water temperature's right, the sunlight, but just all this fluctuating and water, either it be the current or the temperature or the lake level up and down, I think it's really got these fish just held up. I noticed, say, 3 weeks ago, a lot of fish were kind of back towards spawning pockets, relating more to pea gravel. And then just this past week and even yesterday on a trip and over the weekend, fished 2 different tournaments. The prior week I was out quite a bit, and I've just really watched these fish, go from where I thought they were spawning and they were going to spawn to just backing out and not even close to spawning. So, and I just think the bass and probably the crappie are just waiting for this water to stabilize as far as up and down. If they get back in there and, our water clarity is pretty dirty. So if they're up there, say in 2 foot of water, wanting to establish a bed or make a bed, and then that water starts to drop, I think it's just going to spook them, and they're going to back out or just hang out for a while. I'm not real sure myself, and it's kind of left me chasing fish every day, kind of a little different, say, rock structure or, the degree of a bank, whether it be flat or steeper. So each day, it's been changing. So, let's just say, for instance, last Friday, we fished, kind of pre-fishing for the weekend, and we found quite a few fish just in some little spawning pockets just off Main Lake. And there was a lot of fish in there. We caught a lot of fish. Now, come Saturday, a tournament, fished a charity tournament out of Patisi, and those fish, we couldn't catch them back in the pea gravel type stuff. We had to back out to more ledgy stuff. And that's kind of where I've been finding them here the last few days. And yesterday on a trip, we started out trying to force the pea gravel kind of spawning pockets. And eventually we had to back out after about an hour and a half or so, pretty slow. We backed out to more just off of Main Lake or even on Main Lake, more ledgy rock or shelf rock, I'd call it. Ledgy is kind of, maybe 2 foot increment drops. You may have a drop, it may come out 8 foot and then drop again. It continues that on out in the water. And then shelf rock is kind of the same, except for you may only have 2 or 3, maybe 4-inch drops, but a lot more frequent. And then you may have some rocks mixed in with that shelf rock. And it just seemed to me like they were relating more to that type of stuff. So, if you're coming down and you're not catching fish in one area, whether it be spawning pockets or shelfie or bluff or, ledge, just switch it up. If you go right now, an hour and a half without a bite or very many bites, I would move, because the fish are all up shallow, the majority of them. They're ready to spawn, they're eating, so there's really no reason not to be getting bites right now. if you're out there. So my point is, if you're not getting bites, change the area or change where you're located in, say, whether it be main lake or just inside a creek or a cove or all the way in the back. So that brings me to this time of year, or when things are like this, a lot of changing conditions. Like today we had, let's see, yesterday I think it was 75, 78 degrees and sunny. And then today it was in the 50s all day and raining. So, that shallow water temperature is going to fluctuate quite a bit when it's like that. It'll change, 3 to 5 degrees overnight or throughout the day. So with that being said, if you pick, say, these smaller pockets just off main lake or just off a major creek that aren't real deep as far as lengthwise, you can fish from the point of it, the main part of it, whether it be the main part of the creek or the main part of main lake, and you can fish from there, the point of it, where there's bigger rock, steeper banks, all the way to the back. Say if it's only 50, maybe 80 yard deep pocket, you can fish that whole thing pretty quick, and it's gonna die in whether they're on the points, bigger rocks, or if you get to the very back and there's pea gravel, and then you catch them back there. It's gonna die in to where they're at as far as what they're holding on, and that's gonna die in pretty quick. Instead of having to fish a long creek or a long cove to figure out where they're at, which is going to take up a lot of time. Once you establish what they're relating to, then you can just duplicate that everywhere. So, the watercolor is still dirty, is what I'm going to call it. Like the glaze arm is pretty good shape. Kind of got green tint. The lower diangulas is in good shape color wise, and the gravois just inside there, kind of like always. But your lower end, like say from the dam up to the gravois, I was in that area yesterday and it's dirty. For this time of year, or that area of the lake, I would say. When I say dirty, I'm thinking 18 inches, 2 foot visibility. So it's fairly dirty. And that's just contributed to all the water that's running from Truman and all the current. It's just continuing to bring that water down from up the rivers and just take it on out Bagno. So it's keeping all that dirty water flowing through there. So it's going to maintain a stained or dirty water for quite a while, as far as I'm concerned. Which this time of year, your water temp is let's see, yesterday it was 62. I didn't go out today. It rained all day here, pretty hard at sometimes, and I just didn't go out. So, but that water probably, I wouldn't doubt it if it's back 58 degrees, just because all the colder weather and cold rain, it's going to drop that water. So for the most part though, your water temps right now is going to be from 58 to 65, I would say, depending on where you're at, the depth of the water, if we have sun or not. So it's right there in that perfect range for bass, for all the fish to be spawning. So you're going to catch fish. You may catch them off beds. You may catch some now, probably post-spawn. And of course, you're going to catch some that's more pre-spawn. So we've kind of got that period right now. You're going to catch fish in all three different stages of the spawn. So pre, spawn, and post-spawn. So, the baits, they're still kind of all over. Obviously, I would say probably the number one bait this past week or so has just been Crockett Shaky Pro Head, paired up with just like the Zoom Mag Finesse Worm in either green pumpkin or green pumpkin red. Anything just a natural color in this dirty water. And, I've just been using like a 1/4 ounce head, 5/16 ounce head. And then I've also been switching it up. Like say yesterday, we were working a little steeper banks when they get to relating that steeper banks. And for whatever reason, they didn't want something fast falling. They didn't want it necessarily on the bottom. They wanted something really slow. And it kind of keyed me in watching my live scope, and I could see them fish on them breaks. Like as you come out and as we break off, I could see them kind of hanging there. They weren't up tight. They weren't really backed off of the ledge or breaks. They were just kind of up close, and you kind of see them moving around. So anytime that happens, I usually go to a really light, like an 1/8 ounce Shaky Pro or even a 3/16 ounce Shaky Football, rigged with the same worm, and that just barely falls. And when it barely falls by them fish kind of hanging out there, a lot of times they'll grab it as it's going by them. Compared to if you're throwing, say, a 5/16, they're not a real aggressive, and that bait falls past them fast. You can literally watch them on the live scope. You'll see them head down towards it, and that bait just keeps falling, and they just kind of either lose interest, they don't want to exert the energy, or they just don't want to chase it. And you'll see them head down towards it, and then they just kind of give up, and they come back up. Where if you flip a real light bait in there, even like a trick worm, wacky rig, or a real light shaky head, that bait's falling really slow, and they'll either catch up to it or they'll grab it on its way down. So, if you're throwing a shaky head, experiment with your weights as far as for the fall. You may see a big difference in the amount of bites you get. We were throwing the 5/16 early. I seen them fish kind of relating differently, and we switched up to a really light shaky head and started catching. Actually caught a lot of fish yesterday by doing that. So just something you might want to keep in mind if you're not getting bites. Not so much the color right now as much as the fall. The fall rate can be really important. Another thing yesterday, we ended up catching a lot of fish, and actually, let's see, I guess it was Sunday, we fished Anglers in Action, and we fished for a while with our shaky heads, which was working really good Saturday, and they just weren't really biting. Of course, it got cloudy. And anyway, we switched up about 11 o'clock to topwater, and man, they were really biting topwater Sunday, and we ended up catching all the fish we weighed in on just a bone-colored spook, and we were working it, between docks, kind of chunky rock bank, a little bigger rock with a little gravel mix seemed to be the best, and most of the fish were, say, 6 to 8 foot off of the bank, and I would put them in about over 4 to 5 foot of water, and we were just working the spooks. We throw it up to the bank and work it out, and pretty much every fish would hit about 6 foot off of the bank, so much that we ended up kind of scooting up closer to the bank, and we would parallel the bank. Denise would throw out the back, I'd throw out the front, and we tried to keep that bait in that magic distance off of the bank or over that 5 foot of water, and that's where most of our bites were coming. So once we kind of figured that out, we just ran really banks anywhere that had those right conditions, and then we caught a lot of fish doing that. So this time of year, the spook's really good, a real good bait to cover a lot of water when these fish are in all 3 stages: pre-spawn, post-spawn, or even spawning. You can catch these fish that are just hanging out. If you have some on beds, the spook will draw them up off of them beds to hit these baits. And then here in a couple of weeks, when the majority of them have already spawned and they're head back out, they're garden fry, they're still hanging out around them bed and guarding it, the spook will really come on really strong. Between the spook and then your black headknacker buzzbait, we caught a few Sunday on the buzzbait too. Kind of picked up the speed a little bit once we seen they were pretty active. We caught some on the buzzbait, and we caught them on the spook. We were just kind of switching up back and forth. The buzzbait seems to come on here more post-spawn, which is going to be in a week or so, maybe 2-3 weeks. But then they really get aggressive, and they're really feeding up heavy. Once their majority of them are post-spawn. So look for that to get a lot better. Some other baits, the Wacky Rig Cinco has been real good. You know, just throwing it on a spinning rod reel with some braid, and then usually 8-pound test. Usually monofilament on your leader, that'll help keep that bait from sinking real fast. You kind of want it just hovering above the bed or around them as long as you can before it gets to the bottom. You know, if it gets just out of sight, like this is a bubblegum color, which is a real popular one, gets a lot of bites. You just kind of want it hovering above them beds or around them beds as long as you can. If it sinks out of sight, just kind of twitch it back up the surface and just let it, recycle back down towards them beds. A lot of those bites are coming, back up underneath the catwalks, under the cables. So this bait here, you can skip it really well. I don't care who you are. It doesn't take 15 minutes to figure out how to skip a Cinco on a spinning rod and reel. So, a little different than bait casters. Sometimes that can be a little tricky skipping, but you rig up a spinning rod and reel with a leader on it and put a Cinco on it, and you can skip that thing anywhere. And I mean, you can skip that thing 20, 30 feet back up underneath that stuff where you need to get some of these bigger fish out of there. You can also just kind of go down a bank with that too and catch a lot of fish. So your Carolina rig's been catching a few fish either with a big bait like your swamp bug senior, just a green pumpkin on that, or a lot of times we'll switch it up and we'll just put our muskrat on it, a green pumpkin muskrat, a lot more subtle bait, falls a little slower, and for whatever reason, they just change their feeding habits, and some days they just want a smaller bait, some days they want a big one. It may be related to bluegill that are in there around the beds, maybe related to the shad size in there. I'm not real sure, but you just kind of switch it up until you see what's getting you bites. The leader on that, I've just been running about a 2-foot leader, just a 3/4 ounce weight with a bead, your swivel, and then your leader. Usually I'll throw a heavier main, like 17-pound test, down to my swivel, and then I usually switch it up. I usually put 12-pound on my leader down to my bait. And usually I put the monofilament on there, again, to keep that bait kind of elevated up off of the bottom instead of all the way down on the bottom, dragging the bottom. You kind of want it up just off the bottom a little bit. So the monofilament's pretty important there as far as your leader. And same place as far as where you're going to throw that. Start on some points as far as Carolina rig. Start on the points with a rock gravel mix and just kind of work your way back into a cove or into a pocket to where you can go from bigger softball sized rock all the way down to pea gravel, and just kind of work that slow until you start getting a few bites, and it's going to tell you what type of bank to concentrate on when you're dragging that lizards. A lot of times if you can get a little drop, say it comes out 5-6 foot of water and it drops off into 12 or 15, they'll hang right on those breaks. Especially some of your pre-spawn bass will hang right at those breaks. So if you can find a bank that has that, you may have a little better luck. Other baits, swim baits are starting to work a little bit. It's kind of a hit and miss. In 2 to 3 weeks, or swim baits will come on real strong down here. And when I say swim baits, everything from like a 4-inch Easy Swimmer Kitech to another little one here I use quite a bit it's a big bites. It's called a Suicide Shad. It's about 4 inch. I usually just rig that like on a 1/2 ounce jig head, like one of our zappers, a 1/2 ounce zapper head. It's got a 30-degree line tie. So that means that line tie coming out, it's not like 90 degrees. It bothers me when people, you see all these swim bait, supposedly swim bait heads out there, and the line tie is a 90-degree from the head, which is kind of backwards and just is not set up properly. As far as my opinion, it should be more straight out of the nose or 30 degrees, something more of a vertical streamline when you're swimming a swim bait, that bait's going to remain steady when you're bringing it in. So, I just prefer to put it on a zapper swim bait head or a zapper jig head without the skirt. And the weed guard, I pull it out and I put it on there. It holds on there real good. Same thing with like the 5-inch Zoom swimmer we'll be throwing here pretty soon. I just rig it on a 3/4 ounce reaction head. You can see that there. It's got the giant big hook. It's got the 30-degree line tie coming at her. So what I'm talking about is that your line tie is pretty straight out with the nose instead of coming and doing a 90-degree here. It's almost kind of opposite when that bait's going to be swimming. But that's just my opinion. I don't know if there's any merit to it or not, but that's just how I think about it. And as far as that swim bait, we'll talk more about it as that comes on. But that's just a big rod, 7-foot rod, usually 17-pound test. You're making a long cast. You're covering a lot of water with that. That's going to be more as they get out there, more post-spawn out relating to drop-offs, long points, and things like that. The crappies remained really good here lately. Couple setups for that. I'm throwing the old bobber, about 2 foot up from your jig head. That's just your chartreuse and blue, just a Bobby Garland little shad on a little 16-ounce head, throwing it right up to the bank. Same thing as you're doing for bass as far as bank style. Try some rocks, bigger rocks, and try your pea gravel, try your little protected pockets. If you can find something with just a little bit of wind, a little bit of chop, that's going to work better for this because you're basically just reeling it real slow and you're letting the bobber do the work. It keeps that bait in the strike zone a long time, keeps it up off the bottom, and as that comes over where a crappie bed might be, they're going to come up and grab it. So that's a real popular and real effective way to catch crappie this time of year. The other is just this is more set up for shooting docks, some of your main lake docks, or in some of your creeks, some of the docks that sit out a little bit further, has a lot of shade from a big swim platform. It's going to be more of a shooting rig. Same Bobby Garland little bait, little crappie jig head here. This is just like a blue ice 16-ounce head. The only difference here is it's going to be fluorescent line. I like that fluorescent green. So when you shoot that bait up underneath them docks, you can really watch that line. That line's critical as your bait's falling. And that real high vis line, you'll see just the slightest little twitch when a crappie grabs it. Compared to some of that clear line, can be a little hard to pick up them real subtle twitches. So, if you're going to shoot, I recommend at least putting a fluorescent line on there, 6-pound fluorescent line for shooting crappie. The crappie, it's been real good. It seems like the evening bite, the early bite, and the evening bite's been a little bit better. You can't catch them throughout the day on sunny sides of docks, or not sunny side, the shady side of docks, where that shade and that sun kind of meet. They're kind of right in that little area right there. Sometimes, they want to get real close to that dock, right in that shade. And you can either swim that little swim bait through there or throw that bobber rig right up to the bank and let that bobber come right alongside that dock. And that's keeping that bait right in front of these fish that are up underneath that dock. And if it's out there long enough, they're going to come out from under that dock and grab that bait. So, the crappie's going to be good for the next couple weeks. Then you'll have a little slowdown. But right now it's pretty good. The baits are all over. Even a little stick bait, a stick bait that kind of got a bluegill look to it. If you work it over the same place like you'd work your shaky heads or spooks, but this is a little more erratic. Work it pretty quick. It's kind of darting around. It's darting over the tops of these beds, and basically it's just kind of imitating a bluegill that's messing around these beds. The bass get real irritated right now, and if there's anything around their bed or their area too long, they may not necessarily be going to eat it, but they'll want to run it off or chase it or nip at it. It doesn't really matter why they're going after the bait, as long as they do. And a stick bait is something that really comes on and works really well around and above beds. So that's something you can try too. Brush hog works really well now. Just kind of dragging it along, like either Texas rig or favorite way to throw it is just on like a 5/16 shaky pro head. It just kind of keeps them legs and everything elevated, and just kind of drag it along the bottom and let it drag along there. And the bigger bait can trigger a lot of bites a lot of times, especially like I said, it's all around the beds right now. Either just mainly getting in the bass's space in their area. You get anything close to they're going to eat it up. So man, that's about it. I'd say it's about it. It's quite a bit. Every week I think we're going to see the big amount of fish spawn. I really thought it was going to be last week and this week. After being out yesterday and seeing some of these fish kind of backed off a little bit, we caught just a ton of males. Sunday we caught a lot of males, and yesterday we caught a lot of males. And there's no eggs in them, and then there's no visible markings on them like their tails, like the females will have the bloody tails and everything. So the majority of them are males. So that's usually one of two things. It's either the males are the only ones left and they're guarding the beds, or they're in there pre-spawn, rooting around, building a nest, getting ready, and the females are still backed out. I personally think the majority of them are still coming to spawn. It'll probably happen late this week, maybe next week. I guess we'll see how the weather affects. I talked about the current, and like earlier this year when we had so much, or even last fall, the lack of big fish being caught, and just rumors and people talking about there might be something wrong or there's no big fish. Well, we all know that changed because they all showed up a few weeks ago during the bash this past week, and basically what I'm contributing that to is the lake conditions. This last, I'm gonna almost say almost 2 years, a year and a half, anyways. We've had so much more current, continuous current running through this lake that I really feel it's changed the way these bass are feeding and setting up in the lake compared to how we're used to them always feeding. I think they're setting up more like a river system bass, like say Kentucky or Gunnersville or any of those other river chain fish or fisheries. They're just setting up different. And then here this last couple of weeks, they're all coming in to spawn. So that's why we're catching them. But it's also showing us that the lake's healthy. There's a lot of big fish in here, a lot of big fish left. And we're just getting the opportunity to see them because they're all coming in to spawn. And that they're making them more acceptable to us catching them. Now, once the spawn's over, we'll probably see it get a little tough if we don't change the way we're used to fishing the Ozarks. We have to adapt and be open-minded to these fish changing their feeding habits and their feeding ways. So just keep that in mind. We know the fish are in here. If you're not catching them the way you want to catch them or you're used to catching them, you're going to have to change, including myself. We have to change the way we fish, to catch these fish that may set up differently. They may relate more to points, drop-offs, current eddies, breaks and bluff walls, all these different ways that they'll set up differently with a lake that has constant current compared to like here in the Ozarks. We normally have current, we'll say maybe the month of June, say late May and June, we normally have pretty good amount of current. Say 18 to 45,000, which is a lot of current. Usually in that short period of time, we've had that throughout the entire year. We had that in November, we've had it in January, we had it in March, we're having it now, so we're going to continue to have it, throughout the year. So just keep that in mind when you come down here. Maybe pay a little bit more attention to the current and what that current's doing as it's flowing through the lake, because the fish have adjusted to it. They have to adjust to it for their feeding habits, and at least that's my opinion on what's going on with the lake and why there's different methods that are catching bass. So like always, we'll keep you updated. If there's anything Denise or I can do to help you, your family, a group, down here at the lake on your guiding service, we would love the opportunity to talk with you and set up a trip catered around you guys and what you'd like to get out of the trip, whether it be with kids, first time fishermen, whether it be an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old, getting ready for tournaments, wanting to learn a certain technique, certain area of the lake, whatever it is. We'll do everything we can to set up a trip, to take care of your guiding needs. So another deal is if you're, own a company or involved in a company, interested in group trips, we've got several big group trips. I'm doing one tomorrow, actually helping another guy. It's about out of the 12-mile marker. I think there's about 10 or 12 of us guides all getting together and providing, a big group trip. I've got a couple in July, a couple in August, and these are big groups, 20 boats. So, it's a great event to get outside, for everyone in a company to get out and experience the Ozarks, experience having fun with other co-workers, family members, family reunions, whatever it is. Basically, we can help set up whatever you need out of guides or fishing here at the Ozarks. So that's all I got, guys, this week. So until next week, be safe out there. The lake is getting busy. Just be careful out there. I can't stress that enough. I'm going to stress it from here on out about your life jackets. Anytime you're running down the lake, put that life jacket on. I understand if you're stopping, you're fishing. If you're not a good swimmer, get you one of these nice, I don't have it right here. It's like a suspender style. It automatically inflates if you fall in, and it'll save your life, obviously. So, but anytime you're running down this lake and you're moving, put that life jacket on, have the kill switch on. I know there's some new regulations this year. I'm not sure of the certain lengths or size of boats, but there are some new regulations on having the kill switch hooked as you're running down the lake. It's a good practice, whether it be a rule or law or not. So, guys, just be safe down here. Come down and enjoy the lake. Get down here. The lake's booming. And until next week, we'll see you.